Hello, this is Curt Pringle. Thank you for tuning in to our Talking Issues series, where we talk about public policy issues. And one of the things that is changing in our world today is really how we get news, how is communication and public outreach happening on so much around us that, yeah, people watch cable news all the time, which is higher level in a national news story. But I've come to know somebody who really is a communications expert, and he has grown up in his profession here in Orange County. I actually came to know Steve 38 years ago in my first election to the California State Assembly when I was 29 in the year of 1988. He covered my race. And from that point forward, I have kept in touch, see his career grow, and really to see him become that communications professional that probably is the highest level of any individual that I know in Orange County from that background. So I'm glad to have him here to talk about really how things have changed over those 38 years. So welcome, Steve. Glad
Thank
you're
you,
here.
Kurt, very much, and very
Steve Churm, I didn't say that.
yeah,
And when I met you, it was when you were with the Los Angeles Times as a
right,
reporter. You were a
right.
political reporter. So
Mhm.
you hung out with me for that election night in 1988.
Well, thank you for those very generous, kind words from somebody who has been a voice both here in the county for decades, as well as across the state of California, and great deal of respect for you, your career, and what you've done. So, thank you for those nice words.
Sure. We get the mutual suck up done
That's
early.
exactly right.
That
Now
was
we can
fun.
talk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So, that was such a crazy election for me. Nobody else really knows or cares about it. But I remember that night. I think you came to dinner with me and my family, didn't you? Or you met us right at. You might not
Yes.
remember that.
Mhm.
But here, a guy running and for office. My son was 2 at the time, and my wife and I had been married 5 years. Now, 42 years as of today, by the way. I'll put
Congratulations.
that in line. But a hard-fought campaign, which that was the most expensive legislative campaign in California history at the time, and now a
Mhm.
lot of things have surpassed that.
Mhm.
But here I got to know this reporter who was writing about me, and you immediately elicited trust. That we could talk about things and engage in the political activity, and you understood and saw what was going on. But today, I don't know if there's that same level of trust that the elected officials or candidates would have in a reporter as maybe I was just naive, but how do you see from that time to today and how that job of being a reporter has changed?
It's changed dramatically, and in fact, media is going through radical transformation today. I do remember that campaign. We were both in our 20s. While I felt I was somewhat experienced and seasoned, I was young. I saw in you a young, genuinely interested and excited potential statewide office holder, and it was very exciting. It was very exciting in terms of where we were, both sides of my notebook, you on that other side, me on this. Since then, things have certainly changed. And when you've gotten into the 21st century, where we are today, um, I think media reporting remains as vital and as important as it ever has. But the vehicles, the platforms, the way people are consuming news, where they're getting their news, has changed a lot. And that reporter back in your first campaign is a different kind of reporter today, without question.
Yeah. So how did you start an interest in journalism, and where did you first tip your toe in the water in Orange County newspaper?
Well, it really began. I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I majored in journalism, and I was really one of those reporters that has been known as a Watergate baby, very much influenced by Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, and really coverage of the Watergate break-in and then everything that followed after that. And I really, I found that there were a lot of things I couldn't do, but the one thing that I was fairly proficient at was writing. And I was intrigued. I always thought I could be Bob Woodward.
But I'm glad you
I
were one of those on me. So.
yeah. No, 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 no. I really thought I could be Robert Redford, is what I really thought at that point. And that really drew me into it. I found it was exciting. There was a lot of energy to the profession, and I pursued that right out of college, and then spent the first almost 14 years of my professional career in newsrooms for California papers.
Great. So your first job in the newspaper business was where?
Right in San Luis Obispo County.
Okay.
I stepped off the campus, went 2 blocks away on Higuera to the San Luis Obispo County Telegram Tribune. And my very first assignment was spending 6 months covering high school sports
Good for you.
along the Central Coast,
Okay.
Paso Robles, Atascadero, Cambria, Rio Grande.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then you came to Orange County and worked.
I came, I had a 2-year stop at the Daily Breeze in Torrance.
Oh, okay.
And after 2 years covering education in the South Bay, South Los Angeles County, I then came to the Orange County Register, and at a very exciting time in the early 1980s.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, let me. So the Orange County Register was such a dominant paper here, Santa Ana Register, and that was the coverage. And the LA Times was a separate place for separate purposes. And to me, it's always interesting to see the growth of how the Orange County Register grew as the population of Orange County grew, and then how the Times came in and wanted to compete for that readership here in the county.
It was a dynamic time in Orange County's history. For so long, Orange County had been largely a string of suburban bedroom communities.
That all had their own little
That's right.
papers.
That's right. Had little papers. And most of the residents were commuting back into the Los Angeles market for employment, right? But in the 80s, Orange County began to grow up in a very significant way. Both the Register and then finally, when the LA Times woke up, realized there was some very, very significant advertising revenue to be had here. And the Register rode that wave. And a couple of years later, the LA Times recognized that and sent a large legion of reporters and editors here. And by the late 80s, it was one of the best and most competitive newspaper competitions in America between the Register and the Times.
Right. I think the Register at its peak surpassed 300,000 daily subscriptions, and the Times was 200 and something right on their heels. I mean, you think about that, and now between that time and now, I think the Register is 10-20% of what it was.
Oh, absolutely. It's well below 100,000, and depending on what you look at, and of course the LA Times has left Orange County, and they have their own set of challenges. But it was a very dynamic period in the 80s and the 90s, and the beneficiaries, the readers, they were getting some really top flight coverage because the two were competing to get the best stories and the most accurate stories.
Yeah. So to me, that really is something that people outside the certain industries may not know why that collapse happened. But you referenced the advertising dollar. That's people. How do they get people to come to their businesses or promote certain things? And at that point in time, there were very few ways you could communicate with the public as an advertiser, right? I mean, there wasn't really radio, and in Orange County, you'd have to buy primarily an LA market. Same thing with TV, so you'd have to buy real expensive ways to communicate there. So in Orange County, the way you could communicate as a business with a relatively wealthy, strong, growing community was through newspaper ads.
Even as Orange County emerged from the shadow of Los Angeles in terms of the arts here, the business core, healthcare, this became its own standalone market. The one sort of sector that never has emerged has been media. We have been overshadowed by Los Angeles. So the television here, and of course, you remember the Register tried a venture.
OCN,
yeah, OCN, just didn't work here. And
Orange County News Channel. That
that's
was called
correct.
OCN,
It
right?
was called OCM.
Why wasn't it called OCNC?
That
Is it the channel part?
Yes.
The Orange
Yeah.
County News
Yeah.
Channel. I
Yeah.
thought it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought of that before.
Yes.
So if that were, I mean, today with everything streaming,
Right. Mm-hmm.
we're going to see that with the Angels, baseball this year. The Ducks have a good connection through a streaming option. A lot of people have got the cord, and the amount of people who are not getting a cable subscription and just getting things through streaming. Do you think if that OCN model was presented back, there's enough interest in Orange County and seeing what happens in Orange County that you could have a streamed Orange County News Channel today?
I think a number of people have looked at that equation. I think that there is so much fragmentation, and I think that the investment that would be required to create enough of a critical mass,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need to have millions of viewers or even hundreds of thousands of, but you need to have enough to sustain that and have a business model. And I think people have just drifted into their own preferred channels to find whatever information it is they want.
So where's that channel for local news? I mean, let me present publicly my beef as a Ducks fan and Anaheim Ducks fan. And at this point in time, they're playing well. I don't want to time mark this recording or this presentation, but the point is, they're on the 8th or 10th page of the Register, even when they are in first place and have won a great comeback win, right? I mean, I understand the Register wanting to sell in multiple markets, but when Orange County has a strong team that's in that, and for some reason it doesn't make any sense to me to not highlight the strength of the county, even though the Register is sold in multiple counties, and I get that.
I share your disappointment, not only as a Ducks fan, but just as a sports fan. And one of the great joys, and we still at home, my wife and I, we still, very old-fashioned, get 3 newspapers on our driveway every day because it is that habit of coffee, newspaper, and in the corner, you've got the morning news coming out of L.A. That's a ritual for us.
And you are, that's a traditional
right.
News hound habit.
That's right. That's right. And it's a generational habit because none of my 3 adult children or their families are really performing the same way or behaving the same way, I should say.
Do any of them have cable? Do they watch a news channel? Because your kids are about the same age as mine.
That's right. None of them have cable, and none of them subscribe to a newspaper. However, highly professional, I think well-educated. I wish they read more or looked at more what I consider traditional sources for news, but they're very capable people, and that's puzzling to me. So I'm a dinosaur in the sense of how I consume news. But back to your question, there are 2 factors here that are hurting that Duck coverage. One is newspapers, because of the cost, no longer print as late as they once did in the day in order to capture evening news, right? Whether it's sports, whether it's a city council meeting, whether that is some sort of gathering, even a concert review. You're not getting that because they go to press at 7 or 8 at night as opposed to 10, 11 midnight. So they're not able to capture the score from that night. The other thing is that newsrooms, there are almost 60% fewer people in newsrooms broadly today, newspapers and broadcast. There just aren't as many people covering news. And oftentimes, sports coverage gets squeezed.
Yeah.
Washington Post just 2 months ago let 300 members of their newsroom go and basically cratered a historically award-winning sports department. The Washington Post. No one.
So how does that work, though? I was told early on that one of the drives for local newspapers was local sports coverage. Not only that's why the Times was always so good, and that's why the Register fought so hard to beat the Times in their sports coverage. So you had even competition in those sections, but some folks from the Register specifically told me that high school sports coverage is one of the things that kept a paper going for a long time because you couldn't find that local prior to the internet, I guess.
Right.
Today, you might be able to just pull something up that has every high school football game or baseball game or volleyball game on it. But the newspaper was a place you would go for that
That's right.
local. As you said, you wrote in in your first jobs, high school sports. Well,
Hmm.
that is something people would look for, to see their kid's name in the newspaper.
Where you're seeing some growth, and we're talking about newspapers now, but it really applies to digital platforms as well, is in hyper local coverage,
Right.
because you're not finding that to the degree on some of the larger platforms, certainly YouTube or some of the nationals and even the statewide. Hyper local news, and therefore publications, outlets, social media that's covering things in your neighborhood or down the street or in your city, uh, showing a heartbeat, showing some economic return. The problem, again, I think there are just too few reporters, and then a decision made by like the Orange County Register that we are not going to expend our resources to cover those sports teams. You watch with the Angels this year. It will not be particularly pretty in terms of getting scores in real time.
Yeah.
Got to go to your phone, and I do.
Yeah. And all that does is push that away. I mean, to me, since I've had a hard time with the Register, well, I shouldn't say that, but since I've had a hard time with the Register delivering papers to my door, I've over the years I've just merged to read it on my
Yep.
iPad, and I do read every word every morning, uh, and to see, by the time I'm looking at something digitally on my iPad, to see you can't update a score on a story on in that article, I have a hard time with that.
Hmm.
So even though it might be a late score for the Ducks, you would think there would be an updated version on the online version, not necessarily on the print version. But
And they will contend that they're not as concerned about that. They're concerned about just keeping the doors open, and
yeah,
it is disappointing. I wish when I open my phone at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, I look at the Register, because my newspaper, the print version, has not arrived yet. That's a problem. I don't get it till 7:30. It's too late. My wife will read it. It's too late for me. But even in the replica versions online, it's just the news is already stale. I've gone to ESPN. I've gone to The Athletic. I've read the stories, and I'm well beyond the Register.
yeah,
So,
interesting. So
Mhm.
so we've beat that horse a bit.
Oh, we have.
But to be honest, I do think if a lot of the news sources can start merging with, if that Register that I love and I want to read does have in some way a digital updating for that, so you do get current stuff. I guess I don't quite understand how that digital update can come in other forms, but not on that.
Well, you mentioned, and we can certainly move on beyond the Register,
Yes.
but I look at the Register for what I can find in terms of my local news. Now, you might consider the Ducks to be local, but they're probably viewed a little differently. I look at it for what's happening at city halls. I look at it for the high school sports. I look at it for culture, restaurants, dining. That's what I value in the Register today that I can't get anywhere else on a regional or even national level
No.
about Orange County.
And you're right.
Yeah.
When you first arrived here today, we spoke about one article on the front of the local news edition that was a local story about a local restaurateur that we all
Right.
care about. So yes, I understand what you're
So
saying.
so it holds me, and I'm still paying what I consider to be really a very significant subscription price, let me tell you. But
No, so I mean, I pin you in my mind as a communication expert, and it's not because you know newspapers necessarily, or that you wrote maybe one or two nice articles about me and a couple bad ones, but it is really your movement through the communication sector. So from being a reporter for two major newspapers,
Mhm.
then you moved off into a different venture, and
Mhm.
that was establishing magazines.
Mhm. Mhm. I did. I had Churm Media was a company that I owned and operated for 22 years before I actually sold it.
Wow.
We began as a print-based media company. At one point, we had 10 magazines here in Orange County, Southern California, and Southern Nevada. But I too, in 2006, 2007, the internet was coming and began to see advertisers that were utilizing our print products, the magazines, beginning to shift ad budgets toward this new horizon, this digital horizon. And I had to pivot some. I created some digital content. I launched an advertising agency to hedge against the, shrinking ad revenues, and then ultimately sold the company in 2012 and was delighted to do that.
So people know a few of those names. OC Metro was one. Was that the first one that?
OC Metro, a business lifestyle magazine, and we competed with the Orange County Business Journal, and Richard Reisman, the publisher, and I were we were across the net from each other, hitting sharp volleys at each other, and now we're friends. We're good friends.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
You don't want to stay on his bad side. So
yeah. No, we're very good friends now, and lunch and see each other with some regularity. But
you moved OC Metro.
OC Metro, yes, OC Family.
I remember those two properly.
Right.
So
And launched a family product in the Inland Empire, acquired 3 golf magazines, one here, the Inland Empire, San Diego as well, launched a family product in Southern Nevada in the Las Vegas area, Henderson and Summerlin, and then a home and garden magazine. So we had 10 titles at one point.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is the difference? But I mean, a magazine is going to sit somewhere for a week or a month or so, and therefore advertisers would see that as a benefit because
Shelf life.
They get a secondary look or something like that.
A shelf life.
So what's the difference in terms of those products that did you see? I mean, in terms of advertising revenue better, or a different set of folks, or that more people in the family would look at a magazine as opposed to that one-time use of a newspaper? I mean,
you have summarized it, as you always do, Curt, very well. The newspaper has a kind of fleeting shelf life. It arrives, the print product arrived in the morning, and by that evening, it was really obsolete unless you cut something out of it. But people rarely saved a newspaper unless their picture was in there or their name was somehow in there, right? Whereas a magazine with a glossy cover, 4-color, would sit on your coffee table at home. It would sit on an office lobby table in a foyer. So it had a shelf life. So advertisers liked that, particularly larger, full format advertisers that really weren't selling a product that expired within 2 days, but real estate, retail,
name identification stuff.
Correct. And so it was a different model, and it worked for quite a while. But magazines too have really been overtaken by what's in the palm of our hand.
Yeah. So what replaces magazines today? I mean, is there anything like that? Or is it just the general elements that I will go searching the web to find a story that I want to read? I mean, to me, there is a quaintness, a connectivity of a magazine. I don't necessarily see that same type of product anywhere on the internet.
I was just, where was I? Well, I'll come back to that. What has replaced magazines, again, is what's in the palm of our hands, where you and I or many people would have sat down, picked a magazine up, and spent a half hour or 45 minutes reading a story or two, paging through it, right? Today, we pick up our phones and look at it, and we'll be on YouTube. We'll be looking at Architectural Digest, but scrolling through photos. The presentation, the definition on your devices has gotten so good, and it's so immediate, right? And so transportable. That's what's replaced. Now, there are some magazines that just absolutely are suited to be read in the palms of your hand and sit on a coffee table, but there aren't many of those. A National Geographic, Yes, probably.
How many people have National
That's right.
Geographic?
That's
I mean,
right.
our parents always subscribed to
No,
that for
no.
culture, that for the kids
That's
to have.
exactly right.
But isn't there a weird? I mean, I've heard this analogy used someplace that a magazine, or to a certain extent a newspaper, is what the publisher, the editor, thinks is interesting and wants to share with others.
Mhm.
Whereas today, with online internet stuff, it's what I go searching for. Therefore, I am not broadening my horizons for something different, or hearing a new story or something, a new twist on it. I'm basically following my instincts and going down the path. And therefore, algorithms today are only giving me, in the scrolling space, stuff I've already looked at, or the stuff I'm already interested in, as opposed to something that someone else has found interesting to share.
And again, I'm going to say what I am, uh, with all due respect to my generation and my age, but today's journalists are really algorithms, right?
Yeah.
So you're so right. The algorithms are serving up what you have really indicated you want. There is no substitute for sitting at a table and turning the page of a newspaper or a magazine and being surprised and delighted by what you find, because you didn't go looking for that story, but, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But the scrolling we do, it becomes so tailored to who we are. So I think many people are missing those surprises and delights that broaden our understanding about our community and about ourselves.
Right. I mean, today I wouldn't have gone searching for those women in an African tribe that had the plates in their lips that we all saw with National Geographic magazines. I mean, how would we ever think about looking at
No.
something that is so unique, but still, I mean, imprinted on my head, something that I
Right.
saw
Right.
probably 60 years ago for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that is one of the things I see is missing, that someone else who has a good idea or a thought or something unique he wants to share, where does that happen today?
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, it's a challenge, and I think it's incumbent on all of us, no matter age, generation, to continue to try to stay as open and as curious as possible about life. So maybe you aren't reading a paper, but you're making sure you go meet somebody for coffee more often than not, just to have a conversation.
and now you really are showing your age, but
I am.
that's all right. That's
Yeah.
all right. So you work in the newspaper journalism business. Then I think
Mhm.
it was you and your dad were in the magazine business for a
Right.
while,
My
right?
dad,
Teamed up
well,
on
I
that.
left the Los Angeles Times and he said, "You have a great career there and you're doing very well. But if you want to do more, let's think about this." And he was just imperative to me leaving the Times and helping me get started.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So after doing that and selling that, you did work provide support to the magazine for a while when it went to the
Right. It
register.
was acquired by Freedom Communications. I went to work for them for 3 years. And imagine this journalist suddenly overseeing a sales staff of 185 as the chief advertising officer. So, I mean, that was fun, but that was storytelling. Selling is storytelling. So it worked out, but I was there 3 years.
But then you moved that storytelling skill set
Mhm.
into public relations, PR,
Mhm.
community engagement. So did you leave from that position to go work for FivePoint?
I did. Emil Haddad, who was the founder and CEO of FivePoint Holdings, the company that has developed the great park in
I
Irvine.
just know before that it was he worked with Lennar, and right out that window
Yes.
was the A town that he oversaw the purchase of the land, and followed that in 2005 and 6. So yes.
Well, he was certainly born inside, in many respects, the Lennar laboratory, and then moved out of that. But Lennar remained part of Five Point, as you know. And but Emil called and said, "I have not had anybody who has really been my communications officer." And so I joined him in 2015 as his chief communications officer, and that's where I worked for almost 7 years.
Wow. So that is communication officer with probably a planned community within a planned community.
Mhm.
Uh, and, it was envisioned, here's the great park that will
Mhm.
be this public benefit. So that
Mhm.
property came from the federal government as the closure of the El Toro Marine Station, and then all of the residential around it. So what is the ownership and development responsibility of FivePoint? It was not necessarily the great park, but it was
Mhm.
everything around it. Is that
Mhm.
how that worked?
It was, and as part of the acquisition, when FivePoint won the auction for not one, not two, not three, not four of the parcels, but all of them, to the surprise of many people. Part of that process was that they would dedicate a certain portion of that almost 2,000 acres back to the city of Irvine, which would then lead the design and thinking and strategizing about the great park while FivePoint built homes all around it.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. How many total homes was it scheduled to be developed there?
I think 10,500.
I don't want to test you. That's okay.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I've been gone for about 4 years,
Yeah, no, that's all
but
right.
they're approaching that,
That's
and
great.
they're not at build out quite yet, but they have really accomplished a lot, and they're actually taking some of their commercial property now and rezoning that back into residential simply because the need is so great, the demand is there, and the city of Irvine has a requirement to
Right.
hit a very large housing number.
So explain to people why that is a good thing. That here this development. So this was a already used property for the military, and it's
Marines.
available, and it's adjacent or surrounded by a tremendous city. In this case, Irvine. And I guess I look, as we've talked before. I'm a strong housing advocate, and to think, isn't this a good example that people say we don't have 2,000 acres, but you might have 200? I mean,
Right.
what makes the FivePoint community so spectacular, and because it sold so well, it was designed and built out so well, and the product is so well. So where is the ability to replicate something like that? Not location, but
Mhm.
value.
Well, I think there's some principles involved here that are really important to keep in mind. You mentioned it. It was very well designed and thought through. And really, Emil Haddad tips his cap often and did inside Five Point to the Irvine Company.
Sure.
That master planned approach. You take a look at the city of Irvine. Really, you look at the city of Newport Beach and a number of their neighborhoods. They're magnificent,
Yeah.
and I say that with great
So
rights.
borrowing some of that thought,
Right,
but for the master plan community of Irvine, that was never a part of it,
right.
right? The FivePoint development, that was the expectation. Would it be was it was going to be something else, maybe a marine base?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But it became clear that the growth of Orange County broadly, again, as a standalone market, a growing business base, the number of residents coming here, that land was far too valuable to remain as either a military or a commercial airport.
Right.
Right.
Well, you did use those words. I just didn't know that you could spit them out, so that was
Right,
good.
right, yeah.
Right. I mean, and the community pushed hard for that not to be an airport. Are are there are there more folks, vehicles coming and going out of FivePoint residential neighborhoods and sports parks than an airport? I think that was one of the reasons why
Oh,
people opposed
boy.
it. No, no, I'm not going to
Yeah,
put you on the
yeah,
spot. I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
musing a bit, so
Mhm,
don't worry about
mhm,
that.
mhm.
And then you invested so much in that, and really were a part of communicating the broader FivePoint message,
Mhm.
and really that is such a feather in your cap, and certainly in Emil Haddad's hat. But I really do love the one of the last projects you were working on, and that is the Related companies.
Mhm.
Maybe people can look, what, 3 episodes before this. I had Bill Whitty sitting here, and so you didn't even see that. So good, you don't get to copy him. But tell us about that Bill. building on Bristol, on three basically family farm properties that had commercial development on them, and really starting to change that use on Bristol into a higher dense, but more modern and engaged community. I don't know if people are really aware of all that is happening in Santa Ana north of South Coast Plaza.
Well, I'm sitting here with a good friend and you, and I've had so blessed. I've had a wonderful career, my arc and the different things I've done within communications. The project in South Santa Ana with Related California has to be one of the highlights. That was a 2.5 year journey for me as part of the entitlement team to take 41 acres in South Santa Ana between Sunflower and MacArthur along Bristol, right across the street from South Coast Plaza, an aging suburban shopping center, 50, 60 years old, big boxes, that has been declining. And as you say correctly, the family that has owned that land, the Callens, have owned it since the early 1900s. Now, I think 6 generations of ownership. And they did not want to sell the land. They wanted to reimagine it yet again. They took it from soybeans and lettuce, created the suburban shopping center in the 60s, and now they want to see it reimagined yet again into a much more urban, highly walkable, pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use, 41-acre project. Subterranean parking, 3,700 apartments, 400,000 square feet of retail. And I think it'll become a signature piece of South Coast Metro, complementing South Coast Plaza and the Arts Center, which is just diagonal, the Segerstrom Center for the Arts. And it will become, in Santa Ana, one of the foremost destinations and revenue generators, as well as job generators for the city. So it's been very exciting. And to be a part of that and to have 200 meetings, we counted them, it was 205, 6 meetings, local residents, local businesses, helping them understand why they needed to really embrace this, not oppose it.
Yeah, but I think that description you had really is fair of the path that property and that family took. It's really reflective of a lot of things in Orange County. And, a lot of people who say, oh my gosh, this house I have is wonderful here. Or that shopping center next door is wonderful. You'd never want to contemplate a different use. But in fact, in Orange County, almost every use grew out of farming or natural habitat of some sort into a residential use or a big box shopping center. And now a lot of that type of use is not what is being economically viable to be able to continue that way. So that South Santa Ana project is really going to be something that I would like to watch, but also I think people are going to study to see, that family farm evolution to a commercial shopping center with certain types of stores to something that's going to be much, much different.
And I give that family a great deal of credit for adapting to the 21st century, understanding what Orange County is. My adult children in their 30s, one just turned 40, with families, they don't think twice about that kind of development because that's what they know. It's people in my generation that get a little nostalgic. They wax a bit about the loss of this or the change of this. I don't want to see it coming. The reality is that this is a different Orange County today, and I think an equally exciting and good Orange County with so much to offer. We have our challenges, no question, but we are much more urban today than we've ever been.
Personally, I'll just share that my wife and her parents lived right off of Orangewood and kind of Harbor. I remember when we were dating and right after we were married, actually, we'd walk out the end of her cul-de-sac and walk all the way down to West Street, up over to Catella, up around, and then back to Harbor, down to Orangewood into her house. There was a large stretch of Harbor Boulevard in 1984,
right,
before we were married, earlier in the 80s, that was dirt. There's no sidewalk there. So this area that gets more people coming to Orange County in terms of Anaheim, Disneyland, and all of that. Just a block from Disneyland, there was no sidewalk. Therefore, you'd say, well, why wasn't there? Well, because there wasn't much happening at that corner of Orangewood and Harbor. And the expectation is, yeah, when something is built there, we'll put in the sidewalks and the infrastructure and other things. But I remember pushing Kyle and his stroller on the dirt because it was contemplating, should I go into the street, push the stroller? No, I stayed on the dirt.
Right.
But for me, that's kind of the visions of the growth. And now 2 or 3 major hotels are on that corner. Ruth's Chris is half a block away right there. And of course, Morton's and everything all the way as you get closer to Catella. But to me, to see how those next steps in development occur, and as you're presenting in Santa Ana, I mean, that's really remarkable. And then some will be nostalgic and depressed that things are changed from how they were in the 80s.
Well, I give, for instance, the leaders in the city of Santa Ana a great deal of credit for being courageous and looking at it through the right lens, not simply because it got approved, but because it's in the best interest of their city and their residents that live elsewhere in the historic city of Santa Ana. The benefits are significant, and in the end, they wind up with something they're going to be very proud of and point to as a model in this county, in this region, and maybe the state.
Yeah. So if you were in your mid-20s today and you came to Senior Steve right here and asked about, I want to be involved in communication and engagement, and public presentation. How are things going to change in the next 40 years, 20 years? And to me, someone once told me about this Moore's curve, which is based on technology, and the more technology improves, the faster it changes. So I feel communication is a part of technology. So the way to get messages to people is going to change so fast. What are some of the things that you've heard about or dreamt about that is going to be the new way of communication?
Well, I believe that, and I talk to a lot of young people, and some of them just so much brighter, smarter, sharper than I am, young in their lives. I mean, they think differently, and I'm in awe and somewhat envious of the way they think. But what I tell them is that if you have communication skills, if you can put nouns and verbs together and you can tell a story, it doesn't matter if you're an engineer, you're a doctor, you're a restaurant owner, or you're in the media, the ability to communicate and articulate ideas and exchange thoughts and even debate and have discourse is going to set you apart going forward. I think there is a place more than we've ever needed it for people in media, for instance. I think trust in media has declined to such a low level. Interest in media has fallen off, the polarization of media. But we need media to hold a lot of us accountable for our actions, whether you're an elected official, whether you're a business owner, whether you're a developer. Media can do that. It's just the future journalists, the future people in media, the future communicators, whether in public relations or just broadly in communications, are going to be those who are internet savvy, have certain high levels of understanding of technology, can utilize the best of AI. AI makes us more accountable, it's faster, but it doesn't substitute for the human qualities of emotion, the human qualities of good judgment. And that's why humans are not expendable, but necessary in the performance of high-level communications.
Yeah. Well, with that, that's a good point to end the discussion. So thank you, Steve, for coming.
Thank you, Curt. I really enjoyed it.
Very
Lots of fun.